I guess we'll start with the intro of how long have you been in your department?
Okay, so I've been in my department in law enforcement is about a year and a half.
Okay, and how did you get to that department?
So I actually ended up working before when I lived in California. I worked at PCV, which was a security, and I just did basic operations there. And so when I moved out here to South Carolina, I just decided to follow what I was doing before. Uh, Originally applied as a security guard for the university, and they brought me up to be a campus safety police officer for them, and so I chose to just stick with it. And yeah, so here I am.
Cool, cool. And then I'll gear it more towards the gun violence. In your opinion, what are you concerned about gun violence in the US if you are concerned?
In the United States, I am concerned in a matter of just how the laws are very different in each individual state. I think that we should have the same laws in every state. Just like in California, it's a lot harder to obtain a firearm, where in South Carolina, where I live now, anyone over the age of 18 can purchase any firearm.
Yep, yep. And do you think school shootings are getting too much or too little focus in the gun control debate?
Personally, I think they are getting too little focus. I feel like it's a huge deal. I mean, our department, where I work, actually, we do focus on it quite a bit
Okay.
since the Georgia Tech incident.
Okay.
But I feel like it's something that should be taken
Yeah.
very responsibly.
Um, Now, is America's relationship with guns cultural, political, or both?
I'd say both.
And do you see gun control as part of a bigger issue?
Gun control, then again, it just varies by state, but gun control will always be an issue because not every citizen's going to abide by the laws. So
Yep.
therefore, it's an ongoing issue.
Sweet, sweet. And now let's move on to some different questions. Um, are officers trained to recognize signs of mental health issues? And we'll just start by that. Are you trained to like recognize people with like mental health issues?
A firm, yeah, we are. So I have a personal incident actually. I was working in a simulation they have us do out here. It's about like an hour and a half course. They run you through plenty of different simulators, and basically you have a real firearm, and they throw you into this room that adapts to the situation, and it's like a huge screen, 360 room, and one of the prompts is suicide by police officer, and basically the prompt was uh, there was a female who calls in at the park saying that she saw another female with a gun, and she seemed to just be messing around with it just in broad daylight in public.
Mhm.
Um, and that's all. That was the only information we were given. So as you approach the call, of course, they want to see how you handle that.
Okay.
And I remember specifically when I was approaching her, I just told her to put down her firearm, and you could tell that she was crazy or like
Mhm.
had some mental health issues because she was talking to herself and didn't seem like 100% in the right stable set of mind. Uh, Once she reached for her pockets, our standard protocol is to draw our weapon.
Yep.
And so I did draw my weapon and aim it in her direction. Once she did pull her weapon, most officers would have already made a decision by then. I did hesitate, and I did notice that the firearm had an orange tip. Not many officers would have done that.
Mhm.
And so we're trained to notice when someone is trying to commit what they call suicide by a police officer. And
Okay.
it actually is a known thing that happens a lot in the United States.
Yep, yep. So, would you like to see any improvements in the way mental health is addressed in policing or confronting?
I would personally. I think that some officers need to have more patience
Okay.
when dealing with people with mental health issues, simply because I've seen it escalate from 0 to 100 super quick, and I know that's how we are trained to handle the situation. But sometimes I feel like force is a little unnecessary.
All right. Great, great answer. What measures has your department taken to enhance school safety?
So the way we have enhanced our school safety is we have a 24/7 patrol around our campus, no matter what. That's including me, a law enforcement officer for the campus, and city police. We work together for the
Okay.
most part, and we just constantly patrol the area. We're always responding to calls, and I feel like a good way my department uh, gets us ready for that is that every, I'd say once a month, we have shooting training, and you
Mm,
have to pass a FBI shooting course. Basically, you have to hit within 65 shots. You can't miss more than five on the target. And if you do, you fail and you will no longer be eligible to carry a firearm on
okay.
property. And I feel like that's just something good. They always keep us on our toes and make sure that we're trained and know all the laws. We also, once a year, have to pass our certifications, which means you do the same written test every year,
Okay, yep.
just
Yep.
regarding all the state gun laws.
Nice, nice. Now, are there any programs in place to identify a threat early?
Hmm. It's a good question. So what we have actually for our campus is we just had this app called App Armor, and it's used mainly for if when students walk, because our campus is a big walking campus.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when a student feels endangered, feels like they're being followed, you could actually request that an officer stays on the phone with you as you walk from one location until they feel safe. We are trying to implement that like the whole throughout the whole school. It is something new that we have just started, and it seems to have helped in many cases.
That's a really cool program. Um, so that actually kind of ties into my next question. Have you seen any program or approach that actually works in reducing gun violence? And are the current gun laws easy to enforce for you?
For us, the current gun laws in South Carolina are super easy to enforce because, I mean, they're quite open.
Yep.
In California, I know they're a lot restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, is there an app in place to render gun law?
Have you ever seen any school program that actually works in reducing gun violence?
Um, Unfortunately, at my university, I have not at the moment.
Yep, that's a pretty common thing, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right, so now we're going to talk about government and policies. So most guns used in crimes are purchased legally before they end up on the street. Do you have any kind of policy that would address this issue or idea?
Hmm. So what tends to happen a lot and like how a gun gets to the street is just people steal it. I mean, the way I'd address that situation is maybe just keeping your firearm locked up at all times and only use it if you really need to.
Okay.
Someone like in our department, we always keep our gun handy on us in a lockbox. So when you get to your shift, you pick up your firearm out of the lockbox.
Cool.
And for the ones who take it home, must verify that they have a gun safe to put it in.
All right. Nice, nice. Are there any barriers that law enforcement currently face when trying to act on like a warning sign or a tip?
That's a great question. So it all depends on the tip, to be honest with you. Some tips are very like we take very seriously depending on the matter. Some tips we would take a lot lightly. So we kind of just address the situation as we arrive, but we do take basically all tips serious.
All right, all right. Um, so studies show that states with more gun laws have fewer gun deaths. Why do you think that some states still resist the change to implement more gun laws?
One more time on that beginning. I'm sorry.
So like a sh studies show that gun laws or states with
Mhm.
gun laws have less gun deaths. Why do you think some states don't implement gun laws?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, I've always found it fascinating, actually, why some states would not require proper gun laws, and I personally think it's the same way out here. I think they should add more because there's a lot of people that we end up coming in contact with that there isn't any reason they should own a firearm, but they do.
Okay.
And I think there should at least be just a proper background check
Okay. So
before obtaining a firearm.
would you say that the background check where you live is inadequate?
I would.
Okay. All right. This is another question. I'm not sure if you have an answer, but how can we as a country balance gun control and public safety?
I think I feel like every person who's trying to obtain a firearm should have to take the requirements, just like we have to as law enforcement officers,
Hmm.
even if you're not going to be driven to do so. I feel like you should know all the rules and laws of gun safety and have to pass required on a physical test and your performance while using the firearm.
I agree. I think that would be really helpful. All right, so we're like more than halfway. We got a few more questions. Has there been any situation where early intervention or speaking up has prevented a tragedy?
Yes, actually, I haven't had a personal call where it has, but in a training that we did the other week, we were doing a bomb threat simulator,
Hmm.
and during one of them, I was in the back actually. One of my sergeants ended up talking the person who was going to commit a what they call like a self-suicide,
Okay.
and it was a terrorist act. He ended up talking him out of pulling the detonator, and so I've seen that worked. Verbal communication can talk people out of using the detonator,
Sweet.
and I think it personally it works in some
Yeah.
situations, and others, it's just how it goes.
Yeah, nothing's universal. So, is there anything you think that is like the most misunderstood aspect of law enforcement role in preventing shootings?
Ooh, and preventing shootings.
Yeah, anything that's like misunderstood as far as like how the public sees law enforcement.
I feel like the public always sees law enforcement as like the bad guy.
Hmm.
In my state, at least, we're always looked down upon instead of just trying to do our jobs. Um, Unfortunately, that's what I would have to say.
Okay.
Uh, Regarding gun violence, we just do what we're trained to do. I mean, unfortunately, some officers who do pass our tests are a little unlawful in the way they use their firearms, but
Hmm.
I'd say more than 50% or 60, 65, 60-ish%
Do
know
you,
how to
sorry,
handle it
do you think that if your state had more gun control laws, the public would think better of the police or differently at all?
differently. I'd say so.
Would it make the divide more?
Personally, I think so.
Okay. Um, Now, what specific laws do you strongly support? Like a background check or red
I
flag?
think you should have a background check and a physical test
Okay.
and have to like so say for like cosmetology, you have to pass a practical to obtain your license. I feel like to obtain your firearms license or to obtain a firearm, you should have to do the same thing. Go through a practical on how you operate with a weapon.
Sweet. Would stronger gun laws enhance public safety, or do you feel that they would negatively impact law enforcement efforts?
I think it would be a positive.
Cool. And how do you think gun control would affect the way people see police officers? Like I said earlier, or you said earlier, you think it would make the people's more hostile towards police officers?
That's a great question. That stumps me actually. Um,
It really
hmm,
matters like where you are too, because California, North Carolina, different reactions.
yeah, yeah, it's completely different. I think so personally.
Right, and now there's just a few more questions just to end it off. Make sure we touched on everything. Do you think schools should have security like metal detectors or an armed guard?
I feel like both, believe it or not. I know it makes it look a little bit more like a prison and makes it look unlike friendly environments, but I believe so. Yeah. I feel like it would stop a lot of crimes going on throughout schools and also prevent a lot of school shootings.
Now, what do you think the root cause of gun violence in schools are?
Bullying.
Okay. And I think this might be my last question. Um, what are the challenges your department faces regarding gun violence?
Challenges we face regarding gun violence, I would say, would just be they're so easy to obtain where we live. So everyone has one. Every call we go to, we're more prompt to draw our weapon than not,
Mhm.
simply because the fact I'd say more than 70% of our population has a firearm.
So, do you believe the availability of firearms will directly contribute to gun violence in a community?
Yeah.
Sweet. I believe that's how we're gonna wrap it up.